All right, so let's dive in and bring the bass into the tracks. We already have the drum tracks from before. Let's just check those out really quick. Yep, sounds like drums. So I want, since that's part of a rhythm section, I want to bring the bass in because you want to make sure the bass and the kick drum and all the other drums sort of play well together. Now this song is a little bit complicated by the fact that I have three bass tracks here. I have new bass, bass amp, and bass fuzz. Bass fuzz is useful in this song, and I would say if I have like a bass DI and a bass amp, which I like to have both, 9 times out of 10, especially with a really dense song, I'm just going to lose the bass amp. So I'm going to do that right now, just lose it. Right click, save, or hide and make inactive. So it's still there, it's just not hearing it. So now I'm going to jump in and let's just work with just a regular bass here and hear what it sounds like. So in itself, the bass is a little bit muddy. It gets a little lost. So what I'm going to do is EQ it. So just grab an EQ. I want to bring the bass stuff in. I want to bring some articulation in, and everything that's not in those categories I'm going to bring out. So just soloing the bass here. So I'm going to bring the articulation in. All right, so that sounds pretty good. And find some low end. Just kind of make it a little rounder. Now, it's very common to take a dip in the bass frequency just a little bit at about 100 hertz. And this allows the kick drum to cut through a little bit better. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to make a narrow Q right about 100. So I have some space for that kick drum to come through. All right, so now to get rid of all the junk in the middle because that's not helping the bass come through at all. So I can adjust this and get rid of that stuff in the middle. So you can hear with that in and out, what that mid stuff does. I'm going to turn that one on and off. So that sort of thins it out. I'm going to bring the low frequency up just a touch more. And makes room for the kick drum, brings the mid stuff out, stuff I don't need in the bass. No one needs 500 hertz in your bass. And the articulation, that'll come through better when I start compressing it. So I'm going to drop a compressor on there. So let's go in and find something interesting, something fun, or just something boring. Any of those works. I'm gonna actually use the arouser. Um, and this allows me to add some saturation, so I can make it distorted a little bit if I wanted to, get a little more grit. I'm gonna increase the attack, make it a slower attack. That way, I can get the little more transients through there. So that makes it for a rounder bass tone and a little more consistent. Um, so the next thing we have is this fuzz bass that just comes in places. So let's just kind of loop one of those sections and hear what's going on when I add that into the bass. So a little of that goes a long way. I'm just going to EQ it real quick. I'll do a high pass filter on there because I'm really just looking to get the grit out of there. And maybe focus in on sort of that high mid rangey sort of stuff. It's a little more concise that way. I'm just going to copy that compressor setting down so I don't have to mess with it too much. So let's hear those two together. Now, since those are together, I'm going to submix those. I'm going to select both those tracks, Option Shift, and just like I did with the drums, go to New Track. We'll make it a mono track because bass is mono here in this song. Call it bass sub. Solo safe it. Drag it to the bottom there. So now if I solo either of those, they'll be soloed there. If I want to further compress it a little bit, I can do that. I can compress them both together. So all right, now let's hear how that works with the drums and maybe play with the levels between the two, see how they're fitting, hear how they're fitting. So far, so good. So that's the bass and the drums and how they're working together. Now let's start bringing in the guitars and the body of the song.